Ladies and gentlemen, this is Verity Seeker. I'm your host, Mark Powls. I spoke with somebody about the 12th Amendment of the U.S. Constitution. They were curious about what will happen if the audits and the counting were to fall through and a president and vice president weren't elected in a timely manner. There are steps to the 12th Amendment that lead to the election of a president and vice president. It's a fail-safe system. But keep in mind this: our U.S. general government is allowing the Constitution to be broken. You think we've been doing it right all these years? FDR, as soon as he said, "I'm not running unless I get to choose my vice president," he became a dictator and shredded the Constitution. The president and the vice president are to be elected by electors on distinct ballots. They are never supposed to be elected together as a pair. That's not the way it's supposed to work. Okay, so the United States presidential and vice president elections are being conducted unlawfully, unconstitutionally. So just remember that right now before I even get started. We need to restore that. Yes, it's less convenient. It's a problem for a president. Guess what? In the federal government, in the U.S. general government, we're not supposed to have power and that kind of harmony in two people. Okay, you basically have a tribal entity, a president and a vice president, who have separate functions, yet they are of the same tribe. And the founders did not want consolidated power. Okay, think about that. That's why we need the vice president to be elected by electors on a distinct and separate ballot, and the president needs to be elected on a distinct and separate ballot. This game of the deep state and the parties choosing or helping a candidate choose their vice president is exactly the opposite of what our founders wanted for the president and vice president. So please do not forget that. Those elections are being conducted unlawfully in the first place. Okay, now you know. Please also remember, Kamala Harris is not a natural-born citizen. I cannot figure out why people are not romping on this. Why the media? Well, I know why the media is not romping on it. I know why they're not screaming from the mountaintops. Remember Barack Obama? He wasn't a natural-born citizen either. His father was a Marxist. I don't care if they were married or not. When he was born, that was his natural father. He was not a U.S. citizen. He was a citizen of a different country. It's not where you are born. You can be born on U.S. soil, and your parents have allegiances to another country. The reason why the founders did not want a child growing up with parents who had citizenships with another country, and especially in their early years of growing up, you can't grow up with a foreign bias. Okay, imagine this. Okay, you have a president that gets elected, and he grew up with a foreign bias, or a negative or a positive bias towards a specific country for whatever reason, because of his or her upbringing with parents who either had allegiances or had hatred towards a specific country. And that person becomes president of the United States. Now, the president is not commander-in-chief yet. president does not become commander-in-chief until Congress declares war. That's another thing that people don't understand. Everybody says, well, this, President Trump is commander-in-chief. No, President Trump is not commander-in-chief because we are not in a declared war. You have to read the Constitution very carefully, following the commas, to understand what the Constitution means. Now, Kamala Harris is not a natural-born citizen, okay, according to original historical understanding of what that means. Now, there will be those who claim that the 14th Amendment somehow nullifies what a natural-born citizen is, or the constitutional requirement for one who would serve as president or vice president. There is a criteria, and one of the criteria is that you have to be a natural-born citizen for the reasons I previously described. If someone says this to you and uses the 14th Amendment to prove or to justify that Kamala Harris is eligible for vice president and president, they are lying, or they are completely ignorant of their Anglo-Saxon English or British history or British tradition prior to the Declaration of Independence. And, it's a perversion and a complete misinterpretation of the purpose of the 14th Amendment. Okay? All right, now, here's the process. Everyone hopefully knows that electors, when you vote for president and vice president, remember I said that's all messed up now because they put them together. Okay, electors are selected in each state to cast a vote for a president and vice president on distinct ballots. When we vote, we are not voting for the president because the president does not represent people. I know they talk, when they go on the campaign trail, they talk, I'm going to do this for you, I'm going to do that for you, I'm going to create jobs for you, I'm going to blah, blah, blah. Presidents cannot do any of that stuff. They are not representing people. They represent states. Now remember, states are sovereign, independent countries. The U.S. general government is a government that the states created to handle foreign objects and interstate, disputes or issues between the states. Because remember, if you've got 50 sovereign, independent countries, and there's a disagreement or there's an issue with commerce, that's what the U.S. general government is responsible for regulating and making sure everything stays fair. Okay? Because can you imagine 50 states in a united compact or a union, which is what we are, trying to negotiate? Okay. That's the purpose of the U.S. general government. The U.S. general government is not the leader of our union. They help regulate it, but they deal with foreign relations. When we elect U.S. Congress people, we are electing people to go into this government to represent people, to make sure the federal government is, doing things for the people of their state or their district in each of the countries, each of the states, okay? We elect U.S. senators to deal in the U.S. general government to make sure that the states, the countries, are being represented fairly and that there are no biases within the decisions being made in the U.S. general government. The president is elected by the states, these countries, to be sort of the ambassador and the executive working on behalf of the 50 sovereign independent states in foreign relations. Then you have a judicial branch that's supposed to deal with the federal government itself to make sure it is operating, that the functions of that government are operating constitutionally. They don't do it, but that's what they're supposed to do. And then they're also supposed to hear cases dealing with states and persons of another state, or interstate issues between the states. Those are the cases they can hear. That's how that government's supposed to work. Now, I kind of got off on a tangent, but those things need to be explained in order for any of this to make any sense. We use the electoral college system when voting for the president and vice president, because the president is not supposed to be representing people. He's supposed to be representing the states as it pertains to foreign affairs and executing the laws of the U.S. general government. Now, we have that established. We have electors that we are voting for, not the president. Please do not forget that. All right. Now, their votes, okay, when the electors are we vote on the electors, okay, then the electors, the states take these votes, their votes, they seal them and send them to the Senate, actually to the president of the Senate, to be counted in the presence of the U.S. Senate and the lower House of Representatives. The person having the greatest number of electoral votes shall be president, and the same will be true for the vice president. Okay, sounds simple. Well, that's not exactly how it's working right now, because we have fraud. There's evidence of fraud, therefore an investigation needs to ensue, and we need to find out if we had a fair election, and that should be observed by differing parties, but they need to be proved. So we need an audit. We need a recount in some states because they're just too close. And anything that came in after the deadline needs to be thrown out, and all illegal ballots need to be tossed out, and then everything needs to be recounted again in many of the states for this past election. Okay, so Biden is not president-elect yet, and Harris is simply not eligible, but we keep ignoring that. So, they just need to hold their horses and wait. Okay. Now, so to this point, we should have had a fair election, and we should have at least had an idea who the president might be, even though the electors don't cast their ballots until December, and then in January, there's a decision made. Okay. So everything's messed up right now. All right, so if things don't work out, okay, this is what people want to know about. All right, here's the fourth step. If a person not having a majority of the electoral votes, if that happens, the U.S. House of Representatives shall choose immediately by ballot the one who will be president. It does go to the U.S. House of Representatives. But the votes shall be taken by states, with each state submitting only one vote. Okay, each. A quorum being 2/3 of the states. Okay, and a majority of all the states being necessary for a final choice for president. Note, since the president and vice president represent states, not people, he or she is selected by the states, not popular vote, and that's why the final say must rest in the state per that one representative vote. Now think about that. California, we've done away with having multiple electors in each state. Now it's been whittled down to one vote per state, which really diminishes the power of New York some of these larger, these states that have more electors. You've got California, you've got New York, you've got Texas, and so on, Florida. Okay, 1 vote per state, and it's going to be equal across the board, no matter how big or small the state is. All right, and decided by the House of Representatives. All right, so I guess what I'm saying is Pelosi will not be president. Okay, I know people were talking about that a while back. There's no way. That can't happen. Nancy Pelosi has no chance at all in this realm, the way I see it. Okay. A choice must be made by states in the House by the deadline of March 4th. There's actually a date. Okay. If a decision is not made by March 4th, the VP having the most electoral votes shall become president of the U.S. Now, this is why the electors need to be electing a president on a distinct ballot and the VP on a distinct ballot, because in this situation, if this decision cannot be made, then the VP must become president of the United States, just like if the president had died, and then the VP come into the president's position instead of having it all messed up. These people drive me crazy. They don't obey their oaths at all. All right. Now, please keep in mind, based on what I just mentioned, about the VP has to become president at this point if they can't decide on a president by March 4th. Think about Harris's eligibility. She's not meeting the criteria of a natural-born citizen to serve as president. So it's going to be Pence. Okay? Unless people are going to ignore the fact that she's not eligible. Then they'll have to decide who has the most votes, if they've been doing it correctly. All right. The last line of the 12th Amendment. Now, this is interesting, and this kind of supports what I just said about Kamala Harris and her eligibility. The last line of the 12th Amendment states that no person constitutionally ineligible to the office of president shall be eligible to that of vice president of the United States. Kamala Harris does not meet the eligibility requirements for U.S. VP or president. What's messy is that, they've been operating unconstitutionally when they've been pairing up the president and vice president. So now we know why it's supposed to be done that way. Okay. A president should never be selecting his or her own running mate. And we need to fix that. If that happens, you basically are engaging in democratic monarchy or a level of dictatorship. It's a tribal thing, okay? We need to keep power separate all the time at every level of government in the general government. Well, the same is true in the state's government. As a matter of fact, the constitutions require it if you read the articles. For instance, in Kansas, you read the Kansas Constitution. If you read the articles, it describes how those powers need to be separate and different. And due to the crisis we've had recently, our legislative body basically handed the governor a power that she should never have had in the first place. It's just a mess. Oh my gosh, it drives me crazy. But anyway, ultimately, if the president can't be lawfully elected via the electoral process, the U.S. president must be chosen by the states via the U.S. lower house in conjunction with the House of Representatives in each state that will come up with the single vote per state. States like California, New York, and others with more electoral votes lose their power at this stage, and President Trump will be president for an additional 4 years. I would rather the remedy come by deleting the illegal ballots, by counting only legal ballots, and audit every state that has shown any sign of voter fraud. I think the lefties and the Marxists overplayed their card and failed to comprehend the accurate meaning of the 12th Amendment and shot themselves in the foot. In any case, the left and the New World Order globalists are not going to let this go away. They're going to tighten the screws on those who will guard state sovereignty, our federal republic, and proper constitutional governance. They'll be waging war on the U.S. from within with the support of global dictatorships, global corporations engaging in fascism in our American republic, along with WHO, the upper echelon of CDC, the United Nations, and the current Vatican. We are in a battle over the restoration or the destruction of our federal republic and constitutional government in America. I just hope the weapons of war never have to be used in order to salvage and maintain what we've allowed to be taken. That's when things become hard for everyone, and all the dictators of the world rejoice over the chaos, civil unrest, and violence in our American Union. This is exactly what they want. I would suggest that people quietly stock up on things they need and get 2 or 3 or more solar-powered generators, additional solar panels to go with that, and maybe a gas-powered generator. Stock up on fuel, water purification, get several gallons of water stored, food and other items that you need to get by for a while, and have the means to protect it. If you can't protect it, you're going to lose it. Okay? And be able to protect your family and your neighbors. Work together. Plan strategies and contingency plans. It's okay. It's okay to plan. If nothing happens, if we work this out without chaos and the violence, then what have you lost? You've been prepared. Okay, being prepared and proactive is winning. All right, there's so much up in the air right now. The end game is being promoted and funded by the globalists and the Soroses of the world, as well as all the other things I mentioned, the entities, including the Vatican. Everything that is happening, COVID-19, masks and social distancing mandates in our schools, BLM, Antifa, it's all part of a well-orchestrated, well-funded plan to finally bring down the American Union and fundamentally transform this wonderful system into something we don't want. This is Verity Seeker, and I'm your host, Mark Powls, signing off.